Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of There Goes Tokyo Remix. And we are finishing up on our Kong streak with King Kong Escapes. And Justin's here with me.
Hey, everybody.
And guess what, Justin?
What's that?
I was kind of thinking before I watched the movie, they call it King Kong Escapes because it sounds cool, catchy. Yeah, King Kong Escapes. And guess what? He does actually escape once or twice. You know, there is some escaping.
He tends to do that.
This really was very much a Kong movie, more so than I expected it to be. But I guess I'll do the synopsis, which is a little more complicated than the last couple. It's a bit wackier. Basically, let's see. It's a kaiju movie, so we got some scientists. They're going out there, and what do they discover? Oh, there's rumors of this island. It's not Skull Island, but it's basically Skull Island.
It's Mono Island, good sir.
Or Java Island. Mono, like what? Just
call it what it is.
This has the universal, like, it's a collaboration. Just call it Skull Island. Do it. Yeah. But it's on an island. Rumors of Kong around, and turns out he's around. There is basically three characters. You got the captain. You got, I guess, his second in command, and the one woman on the ship.
Of course.
That, of course, everybody is in love with, and she's, I guess, a nurse. And she, is interested in the rumors of seeing the island, learning about Kong, and of course they end up going there. Mm-hmm. And they find out Kong's there. Kong sees the pretty girl and pretty much falls for her and saves her from a dinosaur who was actually Gorosaurus, who was from this movie, apparently, which is cool. Yep. So we get, Kong fighting a dinosaur again. But then they manage to eventually kind of get Kong to hang back because she convinces him, to be a good boy and let her go, and they leave. Yep. But really, this movie's about the villains. Like, the villains have, like, probably more screen time than any of these movies I've seen, okay? And we got to talk about these villains because, Doctor Who is I'm just going to say, spoilers for some of my review, is easily one of the best villains in this entire franchise. It's not a lie. Like, he is so maniacally evil. He's got the collar, he's got a cape, he's got the big hair. His name's Doctor Who, but he's evil.
Yes.
It's clearly a Dr. No spin-off guy.
Oh, yes.
But he is working with this one lady. She's an agent, a representative for some country. Yes. Some country.
Never clear where.
No, and there, and a lot of times, of course, where there's an allegory in these movies, and they'll vaguely say, there's some country doing this. But in this movie, Justin, she states that she works for some country, like 6 or 7 or 8 times, 10 times. So, okay, we get it. It's someplace that's not quite Japan. It's not quite Japan, people.
Probably Japan.
It's probably an allegory. Even though the guy says, when they eventually get tricked later, and one guy's like, man, I don't trust them. I don't think they're Japanese. Pretending to be Japanese, Okay, they could be some Asian country. But the point is, it's a stand-in for, like, evil Japan, I think. But clearly, trying to get their step in versus the whole Cold War thing. But their plan is they're looking for the, looks like it's the X. The
Element X.
Element X, this, strange element that might give them some kind of nuclear power so that, if he mines it properly, it can help her and her country, her anonymous country, to take over the world somehow with this incredible, aptly named Element X.
Not quite unobtainium, but close.
No, it's the second to unobtainium. But it's weird, and it's deep underground. And what is the logical conclusion, the plan this mad genius has the most efficient way to mine Element X is to make a fake replica of Kong.
Mechanic Kong,
or as I like to call him, Robocom, or just Mecha Kong. Mechanic Kong, who is... Because as you do, that's the most logical step. Is
to build a giant robot.
Build a giant robot replica of King Kong to mine. And they state about how great he is, and he goes in there, and he's throwing grenades in, he's digging. But, interestingly enough, they have a problem. The radiation of Element X is so powerful, overloads the circuits, and Mechanic Kong can't do it. So, what do? We got to get the real Kong, because maybe he can do it. Even though he did say that, this robot's so much better than Kong. So basically,
don't worry about it.
There's this whole plot where they go much similarly to that with, I think, in Godzilla versus Kong. They knock him out with gas, steal him away, think they can control him with hypnosis, and they kind of start to, but Kong manages to kind of overpower the hypnosis and the little sensors they implant, and they lose control of him. So then they have Plan C, which is to kidnap the people that were trying to find him in the first place, including the woman he likes, to maybe have them convince Kong to do what they want to do. But long story short, after they get kidnapped, that falls apart. The agent lady kind of turns on the bad guy because she's worried about cost of life.
Yes.
Kong escaped.
After all this time.
Even though their plan is to take over the world in non-violent ways. I guess they were going to hold the world ransom. Anyway, she kind of has a change of heart. Kong escapes and, of course, finally leads to the battle with Kong and Connie Kong. Spoilers, Kong wins.
Yep.
Though, admittedly, in one of the more interesting battles and set pieces, we'll talk about it later.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the movie. It kind of ends fairly happily. So, I definitely have things to say about the movie. I have a lot of thoughts. But I'm curious what you say. You thought it might be open and shut. I don't know if it will be.
Well, I am curious after that synopsis.
Right. There's more going on than you think. There's a lot they threw at it, I think.
There's a lot going on, and some of it's familiar, and quite a bit of it is not.
Severe.
But is that necessarily a good or bad thing?
Oh,
but,
no.
Joe, I was trying to figure out from when I watched this to literally the moments leading up to this day, how did I want to approach reviewing this movie? And I think starting off is just simply answering a simple question of why the heck this entry?
Actually, thank you for reminding me, because before you go into it, because I actually forgot doing that synopsis, my question I wanted to pose to you was, we wanted to wrap up Kong to move on to other things. Why did you pick King Kong Escapes?
Well,
seriously.
No. It's a good question. It's absolutely fair. I think with the movies we choose to review, the movies that we talk about with this whole ongoing series, we're trying to think of things that are really what helped shape the genre of kaiju.
Mm-hmm.
What sort of helped the genre take the form that it has today.
Okay.
And obviously, we're going to see many, many more evolutions over the course of our lifetimes.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that involves reviewing movies that may not necessarily be good per se, but are unique, that are timely. Obviously, when you hear the phrase King Kong, most of the time you derive to Fay Ray, you think Empire Strikes Back, Empire State Building.
Definitely, that's a movie I want to see.
The crossover we didn't know we needed, everybody.
There you go.
But you think of all these iconic things, and it's pretty commonplace. Even if you haven't seen King Kong, you know of it. Mm-hmm. King Kong Escapes definitely has a following, but is definitely on the sillier side.
No doubt. Yeah.
has definitely got a following, but is also very reflective of the era it was released in, around the era of Showa.
I could see that.
And part of that was because I did a little bit of research before this.
Oh, good.
In the 60s, there was a Saturday morning cartoon that was pretty popular called The King Kong Show.
Okay.
And it's essentially King Kong meets Swiss Family Robinson with a little bit of variety cartoons in there. I think kind of like how in the 90s you'd sometimes get like a cartoon, then there'd be like a side cartoon in there, sort of like, I hate to use this example for viewers, but Garfield and Friends, I guess. I was actually going to think worse, like the Super Mario Show or something. Oh, fair point.
So did Garfield Show have live action portions?
Oh, no, not live action portions, just like another cartoon.
Oh, you mean like vignettes? Yeah,
yes, exactly.
Okay.
So they basically played that, and they decided, okay, we want to take inspiration from this and start trying to create more things that are geared towards children. Mm-hmm. And I think with that, there's kind of a weird parallel between the Toho, I don't want to say MonsterVerse, but Toho kaiju genre, shall we say.
Sure.
And a weird parallel, but hear me out on this.
I'm ready.
Star Wars.
Well, see, you were thinking Empire Strikes Back subconsciously, so you were already there.
But not necessarily Empire Strikes Back. I think Star Wars works best, and same as the Godzilla Toho franchise as a whole.
Okay.
They work best when they really aren't trying to pander to one specific demographic. Mm. I think for the most part, you can view most of the kaiju movies with families, with kids. I would say Shin Godzilla, maybe try a little lightly.
A little dark, yeah.
But for the most part, it's still pretty accessible.
Family friendly.
The problem is when they try to take that and specifically market it towards children, when it's already kind of a family property in and of itself. I give you episode 1, where we have Jar Jar.
Jar Jar Binks.
And in the Toho-verse, you have Son of Godzilla, you have All Monsters Attack. There's definitely a lot of parallels to be made. But bringing it back to King Kong Escapes, we kind of see sort of that turning point in terms of with Kong as well. We're seeing it become much more goofy, much more silly, much more not so much trying to find allegories and hidden subtext. There could be some there, but for the most part, the emphasis is on, okay, here's our giant kaiju, here's a couple good fights, here are the bad guys. They're obviously doing bad things because evil, and here's a couple cool set pieces that will pay off later on.
Which I guess you're right, is around this time is kind of when the Godzilla movies were kind of shifting that direction. Yeah. It's sillier anyway.
Godzilla goes from being this terrifying nuclear allegory to
cutie,
adorable father figure who's trying to basically emphasize finish what you start.
Yeah, and I think aesthetically speaking, I think that the Kong in this movie really leans into that a lot. I mean, yes, they kind of made Godzilla a little more adorable and cuddly as the movies went on around this time. But man, I think Kong might have him beat he's got the big doughy eyes, and he's just like. But I
definitely play up the fact that he's kind of a little kid, much more in this than any other movie that led up to it.
Yeah, and, but I kind of thought that it was interesting watching this movie, specifically how. Even though you're right, it is quite silly, it is still very much a Kong movie.
Yes.
That they're respecting it and doing literally all the Kong tropes because he likes the Fay Wray type. Obviously he has the moment where he holds her and is, wants to protect her, and she has some influence over him. And, you've got him fighting the dinosaur. You've got him captured and used incorrectly by men for selfish whims. And there's even the ultimate battle on some high scaling tower, where somebody falls. It's like, so they clearly are hitting all the main notes they have to. So it's kind of weird how this is still very much a King Kong story, but it's the same sort of thing. Like you'd think, even though a lot of interesting things were going on in the movie, it doesn't completely shift from what we know. But that made me wonder, is that one reason why King Kong hasn't had as much of a run in terms of numbers of movies that Godzilla or Gamera has? Because it seems like maybe there's a fear of leaning too far away from that basic story, because even this movie kind of doesn't.
Well, I think the big problem with King Kong is, at its core, King Kong is a tragedy.
Yeah.
And the problem is we're trying to find ways to... All the people that are trying to use the King Kong story are essentially trying to write themselves out of that hole, and it's essentially you're going towards the same end. Like, King Kong is a complete story.
Yeah.
Trying to say, oh, don't worry, that didn't happen. Here's something else entirely that kind of negates that. Doesn't really solve the problem. Don't get me wrong, viewers. I liked Kong Skull Island. I did not like Godzilla vs. Kong, but that's a story for another day.
Yeah.
But
we'll talk about that at some point. So are you saying you would have rather they kind of ended it more tragically here? Because I kind of like the fact it was upbeat, where it's different than Godzilla, who, even when he's kind of more the good guy, is still more of an independent entity. Literally at the end of the movie, Kong's running along with them as they're driving after the bad guy. I think that's fine, and I'm just kind of surprised that with this era, they didn't lean into more of using Kong as kind of a hero, like, Well,
I think the problem is, where I was going with that was because he's such a tragic character, it's hard to keep bringing him back for more without telling the same story over and over and over again. Like, even though there's several Godzilla versus blah, blah, blah movies, the stories are different.
Usually very different.
There are conventions, there are other things happening, sometimes in good ways, sometimes in bad. With Kong, I feel like if you have it go on for too long, it's going to be very copy and paste, okay? And even here, I think we see that to varying degrees, which was why I really, really found myself struggling to get through the first, 30 minutes of the movie, because it's essentially rehashing the 1933 King Kong movie, where you have... We have people trying to go to a mysterious island in hopes of something unique and really cool. We have weird things happen on the island. We have big monster fight. We have Fay Wray-like character. We have kidnapped by Fay Wray character.
Yeah.
We have
like I said, it's kind of doing the King Kong movie again. Though in defense of this movie, a lot of the Godzilla movies are similar too.
Oh yeah, no, it's true. There are similarities, and where I was going with that was once it starts getting away from that, the movie does pick up a lot more, which I appreciate. Like, it starts out definitely much more pandering to the kid audience. Yeah. The one thing I thought was kind of funny was the studios apparently wanted this to be more violent than it was.
Really?
And the filmmakers had to literally be like, we don't want to show little kids' blood. Which I just keep thinking, like, wow, how the tables have turned in modern times.
Though I will say there wasn't as much destruction or death as there have been in other movies. But the couple there are, though, it's interesting. The ones that I remember the most are, well, the bad guy, the villain, the main Doctor Who, he shoots 2 people.
Oh, yeah.
He shoots the native guy multiple times.
Yeah.
You know,
it's a brutal death.
Point blank. And then later, spoilers, the lady that turns against him and gets shot again too, point blank as well. So there aren't many deaths, but they're like straight up point blank getting shot multiple times, and there is blood. And so once again, kind of blatantly violent for more of a family friendly movie.
Oh, considerably. And I mean, even with the Gorosaurus fight, like even though they have him foaming at the mouth, you know what's going on there. So
I mean, well, I will say too, that was a pretty good fight, probably the best one in the movie, because it's sort of brutal in the sense that Kong just beats the guy to death.
Yeah,
he beats him to death, and I just like, so it's obviously not that visceral, other than the foaming, which kind of surprised me, but pretty brutal. Though it was cool though, because they did fake us out, because I thought he'd already beaten him because they have the leg go limp.
Oh yeah, same.
But then Gorosaurus, bites him, and so he's got to kind of, basically beat him down. Though I think that's a reference to the original movie again, where he breaks the dinosaur's jaw. So does it again.
Yep.
Wonder how Gorosaurus came back in the fight for Ghidorah.
Well, there you go.
That
didn't happen. There was another Gorosaurus. Don't worry about it.
There's always like several. Several.
Yeah.
They come back. Same guy. No, I agree. I kind of actually thought the movie was pretty well paced throughout. Like, one thing I enjoyed about it was that it wasn't boring. Like, there was always something going on.
Yeah.
And I know that I don't want to go too much into what you mentioned before, but one of the excuses that has been an issue with really the more recent Godzilla movies we've seen that the U.S. has put out is it, who has those? Is it
Warner Brothers?
Is it Warner Brothers? Okay, so the Warner Brothers MonsterVerse right now with Godzilla King of Monsters and Kong versus Godzilla. The one thing that's kept coming up is this argument of, okay, we lean into the monster fights, which is true. People do go to these movies for monster fights, monster action. That's true. But then some people say, oh man, the human story is not good, it's boring, it's weak, etc. And of course people counter to that, well, who cares? It doesn't matter as much. The human stories have never been that good. But I've watched pretty much all the Godzilla movies.
I was going to say, I'm not sure if I've ever really fully committed to that argument.
I mean, I do agree, yes, we are here to see Monster A fight Monster B and destroy things, yes, but that can't be the whole movie.
Right.
We have to have more fleshed out characters to care about, an interesting, fun plot. And honestly, in the majority of the movies, I kind of really like a lot of these bad guys and their plots and some of the protagonists and what they're doing. And I think this movie had a pretty strong cast of characters really to latch onto. And like I said, the villains were fun. So I don't know. I like that there was gunplay again. They were kind of having to get out of peril when they're captured. So I liked that. It's happened in some of the Godzilla movies we've seen, but in this one, really, Kong got a lot of assistance from the humans.
Yeah,
they worked with each other, and I liked that.
That's something I've always found kind of fascinating about the Toho genre. And even with the Warner Brothers MonsterVerses, the human element can work.
Sure.
And when it does, it's actually pretty unique. But when it misses hard. And that sort of got me thinking as we've gone further and further into the series. It's like, what is the formula to a really good Godzilla movie? Or just a good kaiju movie in general? Because we've seen some do it all right. We've seen some do it okay. I honestly don't think anybody's perfected the formula, and I think at times they don't really care. But
I think a lot of times they don't really care.
But I think it comes down to two real elements. The first is we have to have stakes that we care about.
Sure.
Like, even if the movie's not necessarily good, we have to have stakes that actually work, that make us curious, make us engaged, that draw our attention, that make us want to see what's happening next.
Yes.
Like, let's be realistic. Monster A versus Monster B, just throwing out down for 2 hours. It's going to be lovely for the first 10, but let's be realistic. People are going to get bored. And that's why I don't support that idea of, oh yes, if it's just all monster fighting all the time, it's going to be fine. No, it's not.
No, you're right.
The second thing is, and this is kind of a weird component, but I think it speaks so much to the particular movies in the genre as a whole that we've talked about, that we've enjoyed.
Okay.
Is everyone on board has to be committed. Even if the movie is completely bizarre, like Abira Horror of the Deep.
That one's good.
It is good, but it's completely crazy. And what works with it is everyone takes the plot 100% seriously. And I think that's where it works. The problem with the MonsterVerse on the Warner Brothers front is they started taking it seriously, and then they stopped about halfway through the series, and now it's just sort of meandering.
Well, I mean, not to go off on too much of a tangent, but you're right. I would argue that maybe with the first movie, they kind of took it very, very seriously. And once again, well, like I said, I don't know how committed. I think that there were definitely some people on that movie that were committed. I mean, it was shot well, and I think there were pretty good performances, obviously, some good effects work. But were there stakes we cared about? And our main character, I mean, famously, was it Aaron Taylor Johnson, the bomb guy? That's like the biggest problem with the movie is his character wasn't really fleshed out enough for us to care about his family and really anything. So, and we all want to see Bryan Cranston. He wasn't there, etc. There were some stakes, but I think that was the big problem with that movie. Yeah,
and where we're sort of trying to tie that into King Kong Escapes is, I feel like it's a little bit too in on its own joke. Like, it's aware of how silly it is because they know from the get-go this is not meant to be a serious movie. This is meant to be for little kids. And because of that, I think it loses a lot of its impact. It's not quite as engaging as it could be. It's not as fun as it deserves to be. It's not as playful as an end result. So it's not as bad as it probably should have been. It's nowhere near as fun as it could have been.
Well, I don't know. I kind of was expecting much less from this movie. I mean, it definitely was wacky and leaned into it, but for the most part, I actually thought it was pretty enjoyable. And I agree that it definitely probably knew it was silly, but I still felt like the people in it were committed to what they were doing. I mean, I got the sense they were. Like the best example I mentioned is the villain. Like, the villain is ridiculous.
The villain hams it up.
But I did a little research too, and I was wondering, okay, this seems very familiar. It's not Doctor Who. It's clearly, the whole movie has sort of a James Bond sort of feel.
Yeah.
And it's kind of in that same vein where the villains in those movies are maybe a little more defined and threatening, but it's not a big stretch difference.
Oh, no.
Really, and I'm fine with that. So I think it was goofy enough, but entertaining enough that I was able to get it. You know, for me, I was like, all right, you know what? The villain is evil because evil, but he's entertaining.
Yeah.
So, and I kind of felt the heroes were likable enough. I thought that all the parts were there together enough to work. My biggest issue with the movie actually was kind of in the final presentation of the battle with Makani Kong. He was actually my biggest issue because for me, I'm leaning into it. And I'm saying, this is a fun time. It's good. But as I said, I think the battle with Gorosaurus was actually a better
It kind of ends up being the star of the show.
Yeah, because there's a lot more choreography. Like, I didn't realize Gorosaurus can do this vertical jump and kick Kong, which he does multiple times. And Kong does these rolls and backflips. And it's actually pretty impressive how mobile it is. And but Makani Kong, see, my only real knowledge of this movie was about Makani Kong. I think he's the most
about same
memorable thing. He's the selling point. But I mean, first of all, he's adorable.
He is.
I like the fact that the movie peppers things in. Like, you see a lot of Kong, you see a lot of Makani Kong. There isn't. They don't hold out a lot on it, which is nice. But they basically lead in with Makani Kong. They don't build up to him really.
No.
And he's just the cutest thing. Like, and it's just like he's not threatening at all.
No.
And it's kind of hilarious. And I kind of like his design, as goofy as it is. But the problem with it was he fights King Kong, and they tussle for a little bit.
Yeah.
But Makani Kong's primary abilities are the hypnosis thing, where it gets shot by a couple bullets.
Yeah.
Okay. And then his most effective thing is to brighten his eyes, to blind Kong, to disorient him, which is interesting. So I think it's interesting how unique he is in terms of combat. But you compare that to, say, Mechagodzilla, who's a tank with all these missiles.
I was going to say, it literally has rocket fingers. But
rocket fingers and, machine gun stuff or blazers, and you can knock off his head and he's still going. And Makani Kong... that was pretty much the main fight we had with him, and then the actual battle culminates on the climbing of the tower. But really, that's just Kong trying to reach and grab him and rip him down. It's barely a fight, and so Makani Kong as the sort of star villain is kind of the most disappointing part for me.
It's a really, really long time until you get there. Like, I was expecting 30 minutes prior to the end. No, like, literally as the movie is ending, it's the final throwdown.
Yeah, I was checking the time, and I'm like, wow, they get a fight in this movie?
Same. Like, I would say about 80 minutes in, I'm like, are we going to get to this yet?
Yeah, it was like last 10, 15 minutes, and then finally it ends with Kong, taking down the bad guy on the boat, which is cool. I also think that this movie... a couple little things I liked about it too, was there was some creativity, like I said, with the combat being different at least, and the showdown being different. I also liked how this one seems to show off on a lot of the props. Like this one, they've got like the speeding boat, air hovercraft thing, which is cool. They play with that. The helicopter's cool, and I really liked the remote control tanks or whatever.
Yeah,
they seemed more convincing. So it was weird how there are little areas kind of around the monsters that I sort of fleshed out the silly accessories elements of maybe selling it for kids, but I think that stood out in compared to a lot of the Godzilla movies.
It's interesting how that came back in later installments of Godzilla, like obviously with Godzilla 1984. Or 1980. My bad.
1984 is Japanese and 85 is American.
85, yeah, my bad.
You're right. Or Godzilla's Revenge, or
Return of Godzilla, what have you.
Whatever titles, many titles,
several.
But I liked that. But it's sort of weird how I give the movie points for being one of the most unique. But in some ways, I think the uniqueness was maybe not as exciting.
No, it's one of those. It's not necessarily the best entry in terms of the Toho lore, but it's definitely unique. But sort of in the same way of All Monsters Attack. Like it's.
Oh, no.
You say that.
Wait, hold on.
You say that.
Remind me which one that is. I might be getting that
That's
confused.
the 2012 conspiracy. Let's just say two iconic kaiju roles are flipped.
Oh, yeah. No, that one. I was getting that confused with the one that's all stock footage. And it's the
no. That's All Monsters Attack.
All Monsters Attack. Okay. Yeah. Anyway, the other one. No, that one was cool. That one was weird. But that one, unique.
Yeah, like it's weird, but I also say that's a great template for those two things I mentioned working.
Yeah.
Even though it's so unique that it's almost off-putting.
It doesn't quite feel right.
It doesn't quite feel right, but the stakes are interesting.
The story is interesting.
The story is interesting, and the setup is cool. And it's not something we saw a million times over, and we care.
We did care, and I liked that one because it set up an interesting mythology. And from my memory, that one was one of the most interesting designed shots.
Yes.
Like they fight on this island. It's a lot of greenery and nature, and it's very colorful.
Yes,
and it's got Baragon in it. It's Baragon in it.
It does.
Freaking Baragon, man! What a weird movie. That's a wacky one, but that's one I'd like to watch again. But much like that one. Like I said, watching King Kong Escapes, I was mostly pleasantly surprised with how enjoyable it was, and I thought this one could definitely be a good time to show people, get some drinks. It's fun.
I could definitely see this one being a good hangout movie.
Yeah, it's good, and it's just. But I'll tell you, I was mostly invested in the story, but it was Makani Kong, man. I just thought he was hilarious. He was adorable. When he falls and he just shatters into a million pieces.
Yep.
Come on. I feel like the bad guy was just maybe he was cheaper.
He is perfection. Bit. No, he is squishy.
He is very squishy, and the radiation overloaded his circuitry. And Kong, I guess Kong can absorb radiation, kind of, because
which is never entirely explained.
Maybe it's how he gets bigger. I mean, it's his Toho, so I guess it kind of works. But, Yeah, that's kind of all I had to really say about Kong Escapes. Do you have anything else?
I think we hit the nail pretty good on this one.
Yeah, yeah, that's pretty much it. I don't know. I want to try and hit a couple more of these out before the summer's over. I feel like we've had some scheduling stuff and some gaps, but
It was good to do this again, though.
yeah, it's good. I like doing it with you, and yeah, people listening, I appreciate you doing that. If you have any suggestions, I think we've had a couple we've been kicking around, but we might finally get away from Kong and Godzilla for a while.
I've got a proposal for the next 2. Hear me out on this.
All right, well, maybe we might be able to 2 more before the summer, so let's try.
That's what I'm thinking. If we don't do any more this year, I think this conclusion will be a good capper.
All right, well, the listening people tell me. You're hearing it for the first time.
All right, so next episode
Okay.
is one that I've been meaning to hit for a while, and I think it's a perfect opportunity for a change of pace.
Okay.
Them.
I have been wanting to do them for months and months, so let's finally do them.
Let's finally get it out
And
there.
it's them with an exclamation point. Them!
Yes!
Them! Okay, I'm down for that.
And to cap it off, if we don't do any more of this in 2021, folks, I consider this a really perfect season finale.
Okay.
Shin Godzilla.
All right, you know what? We haven't actually talked about that. Yeah.
We have not, and I feel like it's time.
Oh, but you know what? I'm fine with both those. I am. Yeah, that's perfectly good. So, all right, you heard it. Hopefully, next couple months, you'll see them and Shin Godzilla. So, yeah, that'll be good. All right, everybody. Thank you for listening. And, Justin, it's time to say goodbye.
Take it easy, everyone.
Take it easy. Yes.
Are you recording?
Not yet.
Okay.
But
Sorry.
I'm going to include this in the after credits of this episode because I never get you on.
Audio blooper.
Oh, yeah. She's going to be in one.
Okay.
What is it, honey?
Do you want me to use the card?
Yeah, that's why I said you got it. That's why you have the control of ordering what you want. You want anything, Justin?
I'm good.
Okay.
No sushi?
Huh? I know you like sushi.
I do like sushi.
Want to roll? You're here.
Where are you ordering from?
Yokohama. It's
I've actually gone there.
We usually want miso, but
They have
this
pretty
is the
good.
roll.
They have pretty good sushi. They're like a close second to miso, in my opinion.
Yeah, they're not quite as good as miso, but they're good.
Really, no, never done either. I'm more of a Shogun guy.
Shogun.
I think they're better than Shogun.
Really?
If I had to compare the 3 personally,
Well-
I think. But I just don't really like Shogun.
Shogun's got good prices,
Maybe I'm a
but
little biased.
Yeah.
no, I think miso just for sushi that's usually what we
Miso's
got.
top of the line.
Yeah, they're good.
Fair
You
enough.
gotta go. Yeah, gotta
Oh
go.
yeah, no, that's definitely in the works now. Your roll sounds good.
Yeah.
You want a roll? All right,
Okay.
sure. Put one in there, honey.
All right.
All
I'll
right.
get you back.
Oh, it doesn't matter. It's fine. Okay, honey, are you ready? Ready? Okay.
Sorry.
This is why we do the test. And then you never know what comedy is.
Oh yeah.
Run from
warming up. Let's do
It's
sushi.
still warming. Want some sushi? Okay, still warming up.